You're told a real man loves a woman and her kids. You're told if you can't handle her past, you don't deserve her future. You're told that refusing to date a single mother is childish, insecure, even cruel. And yet, more and more men are doing exactly that. They're quietly drawing a hard line. I'm not dating a single mother. Not maybe, not it depends. A firm no. The question is not whether that's nice. The question is it rational? Most men never say this out loud. They don't want to be shamed. They don't want a lecture about real masculinity. They don't want to hear, again, how they're supposed to fix what another man started, fund what another man created, and smile while they do it. So instead, they sit with a private tension. On one side, the social script. Step up. Be a father figure. Don't be selfish. On the other side, the cold feeling in their gut. Why does this feel like walking into a contract where everyone else wrote the terms? That's what this video is about. Not blame, not hatred, but terms. If you strip away the slogans and guilt trips, what is the actual deal on the table for a man who dates a single mother today? You inherit a history you didn't write. You take on children you didn't create. You step into a dynamic shaped by another man's choices, another man's DNA, another man's legal rights. And yet you are told, provide, protect, be patient with trauma, make room for the ex. Accept that you'll never come first, that the child should, and that if you struggle with that, you're the problem. Psychologists would call this role conflict. Economists would call it a bad risk-reward ratio. Philosophers would call it a misalignment of duties and benefits. You're expected to carry the duties of a father, without the authority of a father, without the biological bond of a father, without the security a father usually has when building a family from zero with a woman who doesn't already belong to another man's story. And deep down, men feel this. They feel the imbalance, even if they can't formally explain it. That's why so many of you watching this have had the same private thought. I would rather start from scratch with a woman who has no kids, or stay single, than walk into a life where I am last in the line of priorities, but first in line when something goes wrong. This isn't about hating single mothers. Many of them are doing their best in hard situations. This is about you being honest about your life, your future, and the cost of every decision you make. Because in a world where men are punished for being naive, punished in court, punished emotionally, punished financially, avoiding certain situations is not cowardice. It might be wisdom. So here's the real mystery we're going to unpack. What is it exactly that modern men sense about dating single mothers that makes so many of them walk away, even when the woman seems perfect on paper? Let's start with the pattern most men can't fully describe, but feel in their bones. You're handed responsibility. You're denied authority. Imagine this. You meet a woman. She's warm, attractive, emotionally open. She tells you she has a child, but the father isn't really around. You think, okay, I can handle that. At first, it feels almost noble. You pick them up, you pay for dinners, you fix little things around the house. You start meeting the child, slowly, carefully. You're praised for it. You're such a good man. Most guys would have run, and little by little your role shifts. You're now expected to be patient with tantrums, expected to attend school events, expected to help financially when things get tight, expected to be a stable presence in a life that existed long before you. You have responsibilities now, but where is your authority? If you try to set rules, you're reminded that's not your child. If you disagree with her parenting, you're told you don't understand, you're not a parent. If the child disrespects you and you push back, suddenly you're too harsh, too strict, or creating tension. You are, in effect, a functioning father with the status of an outsider. Psychologists call this a double bind. Whatever you do, you're wrong. If you stay distant, you're cold and detached. If you step up, you're overstepping. In one study on step families, researchers found that stepfathers often reported significantly higher stress than biological fathers in intact families, not because they did less, but because they had less clarity about their role and less respect when they tried to enforce boundaries. Think about that. More work, less clarity, less respect. And here's where the emotional knife goes in for many men. You are the one paying for groceries. You are the one fixing the car. You are the one calming her down when the ex causes drama. You are the one holding the household together on a random Tuesday night. But when it comes to deep emotional loyalty, memories, and the child's origin story, you are always second. You're told you knew what you were signing up for. But the truth is, most men don't. They see the woman. They feel empathy for her situation. They want to prove they're not like other men. And before they know it, they've walked into a ready-made family where the job description is provide like a father, protect like a father, invest like a father. But don't expect a father's authority, legacy, or gratitude. That's not a relationship. That's a subcontract. And here's where the tension releases into clarity. When a man says, "I should avoid that," he's not being cruel. He's refusing to take on obligations without power, duties without voice, sacrifice without legacy. In any other area of life, we'd call that a healthy boundary. Only in dating do we call it selfish. Now, responsibility without authority is just one layer. Underneath it, there's an even colder logic at work. A logic you feel whether you can name it or not. The logic of risk and reward. If you strip the emotions away for a moment and look at this like an economist, the picture becomes brutally clear. Every decision has two sides: risk, reward. When a man dates a woman with no kids, the basic trade looks like this. He invests his time, energy, and resources. In return, he gets romance, intimacy, companionship, and the potential to build his own family from zero, with his own DNA, his own legacy, his own story. The risk is there: breakups, divorce, betrayal. But the upside is huge: his own children, his own bloodline, his own home that he helped design. Now compare that to dating a single mother. Same investment of time, energy, and resources. But what's the upside? You might get love. You might get companionship. You might get a role in a child's life. But you are entering a story already in progress. The main characters were cast before you arrived. The child already has a father, whether he's present or not. The woman already has a shared history, shared memories, often shared trauma with another man. In evolutionary psychology, men are wired to be extremely sensitive about where their resources go. For millions of years, if a man spent his effort raising a child that wasn't his genes lost. Harsh, but true. That old wiring hasn't disappeared just because we invented smartphones and dating apps. It's still there, under the surface, whispering, make sure your sacrifices build your legacy. When you date a single mother, that voice gets louder. You're investing in a child that is not biologically yours. You're stepping into legal and emotional risks you did not create. You're competing with an invisible ghost, the biological father, for emotional space in her mind and the child's heart. And what is the downside if it goes wrong? You can lose years, you can lose money, you can lose emotional energy you will never get back. You can form a deep bond with a child and then be cut off overnight with no rights, no recourse, no visitation, high risk, limited reward. If this were a stock, would you buy it? If this were a business deal, would you sign it? This is the calculation more men are starting to make, even if they don't use these exact words. They feel the unfairness. They feel the asymmetry. They just call it something simpler. It's not worth it. Meanwhile, modern culture tries to override that instinct with shame. Real men step up. If you really loved her, you'd love her kids. But notice something. The same people who preach unconditional acceptance, Rarely ask single mothers to understand the risk profile men face. Philosopher Thomas Hobbes once described life in the state of nature as nasty, brutish, and short. For many men, modern dating feels like that, especially when the system punishes naive generosity and rewards ruthless self-interest. So when a man says, "I should avoid that situation," he's not being cold. He's finally aligning his behavior with reality. And yet risk and reward are only part of the equation. There's another force at play that silently shapes the whole market: who gets pursued, who gets ignored, and why some women, including single mothers, overestimate what they can demand from men. To really understand why men should avoid certain situations, you have to zoom out and look at the whole map: the sexual marketplace. We live in a time where a single mother with 1 or 2 kids, a chaotic past and unresolved trauma, can still open her phone and receive more male attention in a week than most men will get in a year. That's not an insult. That's the algorithm. Dating apps, DMs, thirst comments, lonely men in every city. Attention is everywhere. Commitment is rare. Here's where hypergamy kicks in. Hypergamy is the tendency, especially in women, to seek the best possible deal. The most status, the most security, the most excitement, the most emotional stimulation they can get relative to their own perceived value. Now combine that instinct with modern technology. A single mother in a small town used to compare herself to a few local men. A single mother today compares herself to everyone. She can get messages from men, younger, older, richer, more handsome, more desperate. So what happens? Even if her situation is objectively more complicated, kids, baggage, an ex, court orders, her perceived value often stays inflated by endless digital attention. In other words, the market corrected for men, but not for her. A man without kids, working hard, trying to build a life, looks at his situation like this: I have one life, I have limited time, I need to invest wisely. But she might see it like this: I still have options, I still get DMs. If you don't want to step up, another man will. And sometimes another man will, for a while. But notice what kind of men usually line up for the hardest deals: men who are lonely, men who lack options, men who desperately want to be needed, men who overcompensate by trying to save someone. The average man watching this is not swimming in options. He knows that. But the cruel twist is this: the women with the most complicated realities can still behave like they're at the top of the market, because they're flooded with offers of attention, not offers of stable leadership and long-term commitment. That confusion is deadly. Because from her side, she thinks, if men are still chasing me, my standards don't need to change. From his side, he thinks, if I want love at all, maybe I have to accept a situation that is clearly rigged against me. Two illusions collide: her illusion of infinite options, his illusion that he must accept a bad deal to avoid being alone. The result? Men sign up for roles that drain them. Women assume the men who accept it are just not strong enough when they eventually crack. This is why understanding the marketplace matters. It's not about hating women. It's about recognizing that your scarcity and her abundance are pushing you toward decisions that serve her emotional comfort but destroy your long-term stability. Hypergamy means she will always be tempted to see if she can do better. Your job is to ask whether you should even be at that table in the first place. And there is another layer, deeper and more uncomfortable. How all of this plays out inside your psyche, your confidence, your masculinity, your sense of self, when you enter a relationship where you are structurally second. But there's a quieter cost most men don't see until it's too late. The cost to your identity. Men don't just want love. Men want to feel like men in their relationships. Respected, desired, chosen. Dating a single mother for many men slowly attacks those 3 pillars. Let's walk through how it happens. At the start, you feel strong. You're stepping up. You're showing you're not afraid of responsibility. People praise you. You're such a good guy. Not many men would take this on. That praise is a drug. It feeds your ego. It makes you feel noble, but nobility is not the same as stability. Over time, you notice small things. Family photos where you're not in the history. Inside jokes between her and the child about when daddy did this that you're not part of. Conversations where the ex's name keeps coming up like a ghost at the table. You brush it off. You tell yourself, this is what I signed up for. Then the discipline problem starts. You say no, she says yes. You tell the child, that's not okay. She undercuts you right in front of them. You feel your authority collapse in real time. You feel the child's eyes on you, learning one lesson. You're not really in charge here. And with every time this happens, something inside you shrinks. You start to walk on eggshells. You don't want to upset the child. You don't want to upset her, so you stop speaking up. You tolerate things you'd never allow in a family you built yourself. This is how a man loses his frame. In psychology, they talk about role strain, when the expectations of a role become so contradictory that the person in it starts to break down. You're expected to act like a father. You're denied the rightful power of one. You're expected to be emotionally present. You're given no safe space to be emotionally honest about how hard that actually is. So what do men do? They numb themselves. They pull back internally, even if they're still there physically. They stop dreaming about their own future and start living in maintenance mode. Just keep the peace. Just don't rock the boat. Just make it to the next weekend. Years pass like this. The man who once dreamed of his own legacy, his own children, his own name carried forward, becomes a background character in someone else's story. He might not even realize how much he's changed until something snaps. A big fight, a breakup, or a moment of brutal clarity where he looks in the mirror and thinks, who am I in this house? Her man? A part-time father? A walking wallet? That question terrifies him, so he pushes it away. But here's the release. You don't have to become that man. The whole point of this video is not to shame you for feeling this tension. It's to tell you your discomfort is data. When your psyche resists a role, when your masculinity feels caged, when your dreams shrink instead of expand, that's not childishness. That could be your deeper self screaming, this is not your path. You have one life. You have one shot at building something that truly reflects who you are. And for a lot of men, that means saying a clear, unapologetic no to situations that erode their identity, no matter how much guilt the world throws at them. Let's put everything on the table. So the question is no longer, is it mean to avoid dating single mothers? The real question is, what kind of life are you willing to build? And what are you willing to sacrifice to build it? Because here is the truth no one will say out loud. You are not obligated to walk into a situation that is structurally stacked against you just to prove you're a good man. A good man is not a man who accepts any deal on offer. A good man is a man who understands his responsibilities, chooses them consciously, and refuses to betray his own future out of guilt. Philosophers like Nietzsche talked about the idea of amor fati, loving your fate. You cannot love your fate if you hand it over to circumstances that crush your potential, your legacy, and your sense of self. So here is a simple framework, not moralizing, not shaming, just clarity. Ask yourself, legacy, do I want my time, money, and energy to build my own bloodline, my own children, my own story, or am I genuinely willing to invest all of that into a life that began with another man? Authority. Am I willing to be responsible without real authority? If I cannot discipline, direct, or shape the environment, am I okay paying for it and living in it? Risk. If this ends badly, What do I lose? Years of my life. Emotional bonds with a child I have no rights to. Money I'll never see again. Can I afford that? Identity. Do I feel more like a man in this situation or less? Does this relationship expand my strength or quietly shrink it over time? If, after brutally honest reflection, your answer is, no, this is not for me, then understand this. You do not need to justify that to anyone. Not your friends, not your family, not social media commentators who will never live with your consequences. You are allowed to say, I want to build my own family from scratch. I don't want to be a stepfather. I choose peace and possibility over complexity and chaos. That doesn't make you bitter, that makes you selective. Now, there will be men who still choose to date single mothers. Some will make it work. Some will be swallowed by the very dynamics we've talked about. If you are one of those men, at least go in with open eyes and hard boundaries. No more fairy tales, no more guilt-driven decisions. But for many of you, the most powerful move you can make is simply this: opt out. Not out of love, not out of compassion, but out of self-respect. You have one life. You don't owe that life to anyone else's past. If this video hit something in you, if you've lived this, if you escaped it, or if you're standing on the edge of that decision right now, I want to hear from you. Drop your story in the comments. Share this with a brother who needs to hear it before he signs up for a role that will slowly destroy him. And if you want more psychological, philosophical breakdowns of modern dating from a man's perspective without the censorship and sugarcoating, hit like, subscribe, and support the mission using the link in the description. Because in a world that punishes male honesty, this channel exists for one reason: to give you the language, the clarity, and the courage to protect your future.